So today we got more hybrid battleships. This time we're taking a look at the Tier 9, the Delaware. We are on an Iowa hull, basically. It's just we lose out on one gun, is basically all we're losing here, which is not actually that bad. But you see the turret angles are not great. And of course, we have this giant tumor of superstructure. So what do we do with this? Well, as a CV, basically, now that we're flying our airplanes, we want to be close to the enemy. We want to have the shortest flight time possible. This is really common for carriers. They want to find islands where they can push up, but still be safe and not have to deal with YOLOs or maybe have people spamming over islands to try and kill them. The shorter your flight time, the better you're going to do in your carrier, at least if you're farming damage, assuming you can stay alive. And this is where these hybrids are kind of interesting. You have this carrier ability to farm damage and pump out a lot of free damage with these airplanes. You can even walk into Worcester, Ohio AA, even with the Tier 9, and still land a decent drop in. So it's really powerful what this ship is capable of doing with its airplanes. We all know planes are pretty strong in this video game. But what these hybrids have that the carriers don't have is they can actually defend themselves at closer ranges, right? They still have battleship guns. And while they're not going to one-shot DDs most of the time, assuming they're full HP and they're YOLOing around the corner, a lot of times they're not going to be able to get to that point since you're going to be spotting for your team, you're going to be helping take out those enemy DDs. It's something that a lot of battleships aren't capable of, is that extra spotting. So you're this weird hybrid combination between battleships and carriers, but you actually make up for a lot of the weaknesses of both classes. Carriers are very weak at close range when they get surprised. Battleships aren't that weak at close range. They do have a lot of HP and can have some pretty big, powerful guns. Battleships are weak on information gathering, and you have planes to make up for that. So these hybrid battleships, I think, are very, very strong. I personally don't like them in the game, in case you're wondering. I really don't think that they're good for the game. I think they're going to make the game a lot worse and a lot more campy. But if you're going to play them, I think there's a few things you want to know. Specifically, the back turrets are bait. I really, really believe this. The more I've played these ships, I've played the Tier 8, the Tier 9, and the Tier 10 already. A bunch on the Tier 10 specifically. The back turrets are bait. You don't even get back turrets in the Tier 8, which is kind of interesting. But now here on the Delaware, notice how I'm playing. I'm just bow in here. We're going to take some pain into our superstructure. It's just going to happen. But as we're trying to use our rear turrets, I notice I take a lot more damage in these ships. You're going to want to angle as best you can. And if you're in a non-carrier game like we are here, try and find a very close-up, aggressive island to play. You're going to see just how much damage these planes are going to do throughout the course of this game, simply because we hardly have to fly any distance to actually land these strikes. It's really, really, really powerful, assuming you're not in a carrier game. Of course, if there's a CV and you're just sitting on an island like this, and you're not even in control of your ship while you're flying your planes, you're just the easiest target ever for a carrier to come and farm. So even though your AA is reasonably decent, you're still going to get struck and killed out by those carriers. Nice 12,000 damage hit and a fire there. It's free damage. What can I say? What can I say? It's free damage. And you'll notice that I actually swapped to the HE. This is something that I often am doing in these hybrid ships. I knew to do this before from playing the Kearsarge a little bit, but that one's different, where the back turrets are much more usable. Here, I don't think that's necessarily the case, but this tech where you swap over to the HE when you launch your bombers can be a great way to farm a lot of damage if you're able to also shoot at whatever target you're landing your bombs on. Assuming you have a decent strike, you're probably going to get a fire with your bombs, maybe even two. That may force a damage control. By the time you get back to your ship and are ready to fire, accounting for some decent travel time on these shells, maybe your HE shells then go and light a permanent fire after that damage control has been used up. Very, very strong ways to farm out, specifically battleships. But even against DDs and cruisers, it can do quite a lot of work. If I know I'm going after a cruiser, I'm probably going to stick with the AP, and I'm going to try and get back to my ship as quick as I can, allowing for these bombers to continue the spotting that they were giving me, and then actually get my shot off because of the spotting I was providing for myself. It's very, very, very powerful what this thing can do. Of course, against DDs, assuming you line up a decent drop, they're absolutely devastating. We've done 10 to 15,000 damage to some DDs in the tier 10 specifically. Assuming you're getting good drops, right? They have to line up just right for you, and you have to get lucky that your bombs happen to hit the DD. Because as you can see, the reticle here, well, somewhat narrow. It's very easy to miss some bombs on destroyers. But it's not too difficult to target parts of the ship. We target the back deck of the Ohio there, and we get another 12k into them. It's very, very, very strong. And you can see how we're just playing safe from behind this island. Typically, this wouldn't be great for a battleship because we're not really able to shoot all that much, and we're not really impacting the game terribly much. But since we're so focused, at least in this game, doing a lot of damage with our planes, we're actually doing a lot of good work here for our team. And importantly, we're not putting our ship at risk of dying very quickly. These hybrid ships can be taken out extremely fast at closer ranges. So just be aware that if you over push, there's a very fine line where you've overcommitted and you're going to die extremely quickly. Yesterday, while playing specifically the tier 10, a lot more than these tier 9 and 8s, I died within 2 minutes, and I was on full health. 2 minutes later, I was sinking to the bottom of the ocean. They die very, very, very quickly, so you don't want to be that frontline brawler ship. So in games where you are against a CV and you can't play these close islands, or it's more an open water map that doesn't have these islands, yeah, you're going to have to play a little bit farther back. But they're still reasonably strong in those cases as well. Make sure you're in kiting positions. We talked about that in the other Louisiana video where, yeah, the rear turret's bait when you're more bow in, but assuming you're kiting, you're actually pretty good with your front turrets looking backwards over your shoulder. The angles aren't actually too bad. Although it does mean longer flight times for your planes since they're going to launch now away from the enemy. So all these things that you do want to be considering with these hybrid battleships. But hey, I think they're very, very strong. I think this line is going to be pretty difficult to deal with. I've had a few people ask me about clan battles specifically. I haven't played too much clan battles. I've done a little bit here in the last few months here and there, playing just off and on every couple of nights. And I don't know how this ship's going to fit in. A lot of it seems like battleships want some sort of tanking ability at close range. And that's true since the days when I played in more competitive and I played it very seriously. You always wanted a battleship that was good at long range, but could also push in and hold some area of the map, or delay or force the enemy team to take a long time to try and kill off a full health battleship. And that's going to be the issue here, I think, in the competitive side with these hybrid battleships. Yes, they're very strong. The spotting is going to be ridiculous, especially in like seasons where there's no carriers, but you somehow get a carrier along with your battleship. That can be very strong, but just keep in mind that these ships die very quickly at closer ranges. They're very, very easy to farm out. So that's going to be the tricky thing. I don't know how to really rate them. We'll just see how it goes as competitive seasons roll around with these ships and see if they end up getting played at all. I think there's potential, but again, they're squishy, squishy ships at closer ranges. Now this game, unfortunately, we do end up losing this one. I don't know if I could have done much more. I'm trying to think as I was just watching this back. In the moment, I was a little frustrated, I'm not going to lie. I was on a bit of a losing streak at this point with teams. So I was a little bit frustrated that while playing this game that we lost so badly. But even looking back on it, I think we just ended up with a bit of a stalemate down here at A, and the enemy team just did a good job on the north side of the map. And if I had decided to push more aggressive, like I said, we're probably going to go down relatively quickly. Nice 12,000 damage hit in, though, against the Conqueror there. The front guns are no joke. Even though they're only 405s, or 406s, like I mentioned, you know, which is not great at higher tier. Of course, we got a lot of 457, lots of overmatch. They're pretty accurate, and assuming you're shooting at things that aren't fully angled to you and can bounce you, hey, these 406s do a lot of damage. Really solid on the Montana, and seemingly on the Delaware, Louisiana. They're not too bad either. So along with some of those gameplay changes I've mentioned already, the build has changed just a little bit. Specifically on the upgrades here. You notice I'm not actually taking range mod. We're taking the turret traverse. It's something that I've been complaining about while playing these ships while I was running range mod. I was constantly feeling like my turrets just turned too slowly. And then I just realized, well, why am I not just taking turret traverse? So things have been much better since I've taken that. Something to be aware of, though, Since I do say this ship is quite easy to farm out and kind of squishy at closer ranges, you might consider actually going Damage Control System Mod 2 instead of Air Groups Mod 3. Yes, Air Groups certainly does buff your planes a lot, but it's certainly a weakness. If you find yourself dying to fires a lot especially, this could be a good idea to spec more into the tankiness of the ship if you're finding that to be an issue. But otherwise, you can just use islands. As for the commander, still building it relatively the same. I'm still taking Vigilance. I think it's a pretty strong skill that I've kind of slept on a little bit since they've changed it. Not only do you get a nice detection buff to torpedoes, so you can see them a little earlier, it's actually just a straight 7% buff to your torpedo protection. And it's not percentage based or multiplicative, it's additive. One of the two. I actually am not sure exactly how the math works out there. But the cool thing is it just adds a set 7% to whatever you had before. So this ship normally would have 25% torpedo reduction, and now we get 32%. That's a pretty good size buff for just 2 points. It's not bad. But again, like I said, grease the gears would help on those turrets if I was still struggling with them. But I think that this is all right, just going with the upgrade on the ship itself. So that's going to be the Tier 9. Plays a lot like the Tier 10. It's a hybrid ship. They're very different than Kearsarge, though, specifically down to wanting to play more bow in, not using the rear turret quite as much. Kearsarge, if you've played it, has, well, 6 guns up front, 6 guns in the back, and reasonable turret angles firing forward. So you can use them all reasonably comfortable. The tech tree line is a little bit different, but also pretty strong because you have those dive bombers instead of rocket planes. I definitely prefer the bombers to the rockets. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.